Judd
Nice.
Apatow is a comedian, a comedy writer, and a director. His next show is at Largo on December 7th. His special guest is Beck, and it's a benefit for 826 LA and Pacific Pups. And he joins us today from his office somewhere in Los Angeles. Hang on.
Nice. Very nice.
And you know from the TV show Crashing, Mr. Greg Fitzsimmons, I believe. Have you ever met him?
I've spent many hours in small rooms with Greg. I know a lot of intimacies about him that I probably can't even share here.
What he's saying is he dresses up as a priest sometimes, and we go into a confessional, and I tell him everything. It's his thing. It's a weird thing with him.
It's part of job acquisition.
So I figure we'll do 10 minutes with Greg asking you questions and me, and then I'll say goodbye to Greg, and then I'll pummel you with politics. Sophie's Choice.
Can I say something already, David? I have no idea when we are recording something for your show or you're talking in between the show. This is all live because you talk as if we're about to start, but because you have the same voice both on air and off. It's you have a presentational voice. So
right.
Like I literally thought 8 times already we are on and off the air.
This is the story of my life. About to start. I think, is this my life? Let me ask you. I was going to ask you. When did you realize this was your life?
What aspect of my life?
In terms of career, we'll talk about career. But you thought, you know what? This is who I am. This is pretty much. Now I'm going to just be me for the rest of my life.
Maybe when we did The Cable Guy, I produced The Cable Guy and did rewrites on The Cable Guy. And I remember driving to Long Beach. We were shooting in at the Queen Mary, I guess where they kept the Queen Mary. And they had this giant, I guess we use it as a soundstage, but it might have just been a storage facility. And it was like 6 a.m, driving on the freeway. And I think I was 28 or 29 years old. And it was a good job. And I just thought, this is good. Headed to go do this movie. Then, 6 months later, Time and Newsweek call it a disaster. And then you're like, wait a second, what the hell just happened? I think this is great. And then you have to get your head together. You have to have your own inner compass as to what you're doing. But I thought, oh yeah, I guess this is it.
So you looked into the abyss. How many times in a career should somebody look into the abyss and ask themselves, is this it? Because it seems, I always think this is it. If I get through this,
yeah,
and then I go, wait a minute, what's the abyss doing here? I thought what are you doing back here?
The existential abyss? Is that what you mean?
I'm sorry?
You mean the existential abyss or the career abyss?
The career abyss, where you think, I'll go eyeball to eyeball with the abyss. I get through this. I'll never see this abyss again.
It's not every time. I feel like every time you work on something, no matter what it is, it's like jumping into a frying pan. And then you go, I'm just going to jump in. I hope this comes out okay. I have no idea if it's all going to track or make sense. And then it ends suddenly, like I just finished a movie, and then you're just like depressed and you feel weird and you're like, wow, that happened. I actually did that. And then you slowly start going, I guess I got to do it again now. I got to think of something else to do.
So you're depressed after you do a movie?
I'm always depressed after I do a movie because I use the movie
before you do a movie.
Leading in, what the hell is it going to be? I'm usually depressed after because you use it as a distraction to not deal with all your mental health issues. So you could just be so focused on your dumb story that you don't actually face what's going on in your head. And then suddenly the movie's over, like on a dime, like you have a meeting and you approve something and it's done. And then you drive home and it's just you for the first time in whatever, a year or two. And then you're like, damn, I better think of something else and not have to sit in this.
We have Greg Fitzsimmons here. What's the question you would ask Judd on my show that you wouldn't ask him on your show?
Oh, interesting. Well, I just want to point out, by the way, as Judd is saying that, when he finishes his movies and he feels depressed, I was just at his office, and it's not just, the movie doesn't just end. He's been developing a TV show, shooting 2 documentaries, and then he reveals to me that he's written a book. Over the time, remember, he and I take walks together, 2-hour walks regularly, and it just never came up. Like, that's how much stuff he's constantly doing. So the distraction is more than just the movie.
You need multiple distractions at all
Okay.
time.
So you go for walks with Judd all the time?
We walk to the beach.
Okay, this is great. I didn't know this. So I'm going to ask Judd to play Sophie's Choice, but
Okay.
ask you to figure out which one. Sophie's Choice, 826 LA or
Yeah.
Pacific Pups. You're doing a benefit for 826 LA
Yeah.
and Pacific Pups. They're-
Or the dog place. I'm going to say I'd get rid of the dog.
Hang on, don't answer. Don't answer.
Oh, I thought I had to get rid of one.
Yeah, but we have to listen, Greg. If we ask Judd, he had to choose between the 826 LA charity, which helps students realize their full potential as writers and students, or Pacific Pups, which I would assume Pacific. It's a charity that does cosmetic surgery for the puppies. If you had to pick, what do you think Judd's going to pick?
I just heard him say dogs, so I got to say he's going to kill the dogs.
Well, not kill the dogs, but not help them.
Yeah.
You know what's really distracting is like on this Zoom, like messages come up while you're talking,
Yes,
and it's just like all of your fans. One guy just said, get to the fucking politics already, which I like that there's like that energy, that love of politics that's like hostile to just get into it.
Yeah.
Like they don't want any break to talk about Pacific Pups.
Right. Now I already told Feldman he's trying way too hard. These notes are a distraction to the guest, and I haven't read any so far that were constructive. There was none that made me go, "Hey, let's weave this into the podcast." This is a good point.
These are my. They're not fans. They just show up to.
Yeah. Who are these people? Because I am one of them. I am one of your fans. I listen to the show more than I should. I'm the only person I know who gets excited at a Dave Cyrus appearance. And what's so funny is I used to listen to Dave Cyrus on your show, and I always thought he was like really funny and knew his stuff. And then I was working with Pete and his friend Dave on the script for King of Staten Island. And it took me many months to realize it was the same person. I would love him on your show. This Dave Cyrus is great. And then meet with like, the other Dave. And I'm not as impressed, quite frankly, in person. And then I was like, wait, you're the guy on Dave.
Well, that's very sweet of you. Let me ask you 2 quick questions. Greg, why don't you ask a question and then we'll get into the politics. I know you don't like the politics because you're an anti-vaxxer, right, Greg?
I'm not anti-vax. I just don't get it. I don't see why. Anyway, I would ask.
Go ahead.
I would ask Judd if he had his choice right now of doing any movie he wanted to do or any TV series he wanted to do, which would he prefer? Which medium?
Which medium would I do?
Yeah.
That's a very good question because, a TV show, when it's working and you have good actors and actresses and a good staff, is fun. It's like a family that stays around for a while. I'm very needy as a person, and I use projects to create social constructs. And so a good series that lasts a while with good people is fun. Girls is fun. Crashing was really fun. I told Pete Holmes the other day, like I'm like sad sometimes because it was just fun to go to the room and there's Greg and Jamie Lee and Ian Edwards and all these people that were fun to see. So I probably would lean an easy TV show with people that didn't need much help from me, that I could hang out with when I wanted to, but really no stress because they were so good at their jobs that I didn't have as much to do.
Yeah, I guess when you're working on a movie, it's like starting a new business and you're managing more. Whereas with a TV show, it kind of gets its own legs after a while and you can just be a writer on it.
Yes. Where a movie, you feel like, if this doesn't work, so many people are mad at me.
Yeah.
Because movies lose people money, right? Like if you make a movie, say the budget's $30 million, they spend like $20-30 million on ads. So if it just eats it, people actually lose massive amounts of money. And somewhere in your head, you're always aware, like, oh, this is like a financial disaster if I don't pull it off. If you care about such things, some people don't care. I met James Cameron once and I did a Q&A and interviewed him. And he said, when you have a budget that's like $300 million, doesn't that make you nervous? And he says, no. He goes, I feel better because I know if my budget's that high, the studio will force it to be a hit. They'll support it so much. He's like, my fear is winding up like the Hurt Locker, because those people were on this panel and they had a budget of like $12 million and they are not making enough money for how great that movie is because the budget's low.
Wasn't that his ex-wife?
Catherine Bigelow?
Wasn't she married to him?
I don't know. I don't follow such things.
Let's turn to politics.
Yes.
I maintain that movies and television are capitalism in hyperdrive. As Greg just pointed out, a journey person in Hollywood can have 12 jobs, 12 projects, sometimes simultaneously, like you. In 1 year, you could have 15 different jobs. These LLCs, they come and go. They're all fly-by-nights, even though they're owned and operated by big-time studios. So what insight do you think people who work in Hollywood have about the nature of the economic system we're trying to survive underneath, this capitalism? What insight did you have about capitalism as it's practiced in America when you started out, and what do you now know about our economic system?
This is I wish I was smarter because the question requires it. To have more brain power, because it's exactly the right question for someone who knew stuff. But so I don't know if I could wrap it up into one thing.
As you know, this show is left of center.
Yeah.
And I look at Hollywood as an example of everything that's wrong with capitalism. It's just in hyperdrive. If you want to know how an economic system plays out, take a look at the TV and movie business and the record business, because everything is thinking short term. If you're only as good as your last project, that's a fast-paced version of how most people live. It's a gig economy. Let's say in some version, it's a gig economy. It's unstable for most people in show business, right. And a lot of it is unfair to the workers. That's what the IATSE issue was about with their contract, which is they make people work too many hours. The conditions aren't good enough. It's dangerous. If you make people work 15, 16-hour days for many, many days or months, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to drive home. You're doing a job that can be dangerous because you can make a mistake and hurt yourself. You can drive home and you're too tired to do that safely. And the system, much like a chicken plant, it works the same way, which is how much could we get out of these people for how little money? And it does require unions to fight that. And, when we hear about all these people making billions and billions and billions of dollars, just like other industries,
you never hear like, oh, they're going to max out the days at 14 hours.
Right.
Like it doesn't, just like it doesn't trickle down in other industries.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's when people think of Hollywood, they just think about, people, actors or directors or producers who are making a different kind of salary than the thousands of people, who are doing really, really hard labor to get those movies made. And those are difficult jobs.
Is there a system? One of the things we're learning is that there's a system in New York City. New York City is controlled by real estate and Wall Street, and everything flows from that. Did you ever get a glimpse of what really controls show business, or is it just competing segments of the economy? Did you ever come up with a unifying theory that explains why things are in Hollywood?
Well, you see more of it as it's transitioned from movies and TV to streaming. Then all of the pipes get revealed. How it works, right? So a movie studio is making a certain amount of bets a year. So, I'll make these 2 movies, and these 2 movies cost $400 million. And then I'll make these few movies, and they cost, 80, 90 million each. And then I'll make a couple of small bets on some horror movies and some comedies that cost whatever, 10 to $25 million. And so they're spreading their bets on the table, right? That's how they decide what movies to make. But now in this new economy, certain movies don't work in other territories, right? So if you have a comedy and it's never going to open up in China or Russia or certain parts of the world, it doesn't have that potential to make $1 billion. So the amount of time a studio spends on a comedy might be much less than their giant mega action movie, which could become a ride, could become sequels, could have a universe around it. And so the creativity of movies and show business is ultimately serving how big can it get, right? And so they're not going to be like, oh, we need more just good movies, right? Let's just say whatever you might think a good movie is, Dog Day Afternoon, or whatever your definition is of something great, Harold and Maude, Moonlight, whatever it is. They're not going to make $1 billion. And that changes what you see. And then at some point, the audience has been trained to just like that because they don't even get the other stuff. The funny thing that changes it is they're also in competition for awards, right? So you have this little thing where like Netflix, and all the studios, Amazon, they want to win Oscars and they're embarrassed if they don't. So they put some money aside for that part of their business. Not as much as they'll spend, on the gigantic movies or the Marvel movies, but they kind of have to win an Oscar also. And so they'll have those little investments in their awards movies. And so the whole thing is kind of insane, but you see the pipes of it. This is what is required. There are certain movies they think make people sign up for a streaming service. Some movies you wouldn't sign up for Amazon Prime to get this movie. But some movies, I'm sure they look and go, how many people signed up for Amazon Prime just so they could watch that movie? But now they're paying whatever they're paying a month, maybe for the rest of their lives, to Amazon Prime.
And that kind of explains the Chappelle phenomenon of spending $20 million on one person to do 1 hour of comedy, because there are a lot of people, especially if you're talking about somebody that has a different demographic of followers than Netflix maybe had before. Maybe a lot of Black fans are signing up for Netflix. Right.
Let's talk about Mel Brooks. You wrote the intro to the book about Young Frankenstein. It's the funniest movie ever made.
Right? There's 4 or 5 that are the funniest movies ever made. We laugh for laugh. But if you have ever seen Young Frankenstein in a movie theater, it's shocking how how much that movie kills second to second.
Right.
I mean, it's certainly right up there with, Airplane and Something About Mary or whatever, or just for pure raucous pandemonium. Jackass is one of those. If you watch those Jackass movies, it's madness in a movie theater. I mean, it's a gift from God.
Yes.
For the amount of joy it creates to watch somebody, get their head suddenly shaved or
absolutely
tossed out of something.
My kids dragged me to see Jackass, kicking and screaming, and we walked out. I said, "Your generation won. You actually invented a new form of comedy and movie." So you wrote for Mel Brooks's book about Young Frankenstein. I didn't know until I read your foreword that he came out with Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein in 1974.
In the same year.
The same year.
Wow.
So, and the question, when I read that, I went, I can't believe this. Is he having a good year? Was he on fire? Or were the stars, did something happen career-wise that happened? How do you explain that? Because Mel Brooks is Mel Brooks.
I think that maybe Young Frankenstein started out as a Gene Wilder project that he had been working on. And at some point, he asked Mel Brooks to become a part of it. So maybe it was part of the way along, and then he came in and directed and did rewrites with him. And so it just happened quickly. And that happens sometimes where things just suddenly stack up. Like one movie gets delayed, the release, and another one moves fast, and then their release dates are in the same year. And it's not even that it all happened exactly at the same time. Like we had Knocked Up and Superbad came out like one right after the other. And then they wanted to put out Pineapple Express like 3 months later. And I'm like, I think that's too fast to just have like these three things, but maybe there would have been a momentum to all three coming out. But he certainly was on fire
Right.
In that period, for sure.
Robin Williams said, success is like masturbating with sandpaper. When is there a time like what you're describing, like Pineapple Express, Knocked Up, 40-Year-Old Virgin, all that's happening? Is that an example? You don't have to answer this question. I would assume that there are many points in a person's life when on paper, everything looks great, but then you look up and you go, why does this, how do you avoid that? How do you avoid having something be good on paper in terms of your life, but then you look up and you go, why is this like scraping at my innards? I'm not saying that's what happened, but
like, are you happy when it's happening versus just, because you could have things do well and be successful at the most miserable moment in your life, or it can make your life more miserable while you've done a good job.
Can success make you go through a miserable time?
Yeah, I think it's kind of built.
Why does it make people miserable? I think it happens to everybody who tastes. What is it that's so painful about success?
Well, I think part of
I'd ask Greg, but neither Greg and I could answer that.
I'll handle the pain part. I can handle that.
Huh?
Well, I would say this, that people tend to be happiest when they're like solid, right? Like, I think like the people who make like 150 grand a year are, for the most part, probably happier than the uber wealthy, and that's what they say. Like, it really does create 8,000 other problems. And when you're not uber wealthy, it's easy to go, fuck those people. But I think it does create an enormous amount of misery. There's something really nice about the climb and not having all of the other problems that go with those things.
You helped Obama with his White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah.
It wasn't the night he killed bin Laden, was it?
It was, yeah.
Really?
It was part of it. It was part of the thing. I was part of it. Yeah. I used to do a joke about that because I thought, when he was doing these jokes we wrote for the Correspondents' Dinner, it was the exact moment that he was murdering Osama bin Laden, that maybe, you know, that was like the decoy, like, oh, Osama bin Laden felt relaxed because he's not going to do anything to me. He's doing stand-up comedy at this show. And so I was part of the team that was creating the conditions to kill him. So I feel like I did it.
Yeah.
Now, wait a second. So you were planning the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's a high pressure situation. And he's going downstairs to the Situation Room to plan the assassination of bin Laden, who when you look back, was there a tell? Was there anything that
he seemed happy that night? I don't know the exact timing
up to it. Was there something? Was he nervous? Was there?
Well, that's not how I work on it. My friend John Lovett, I met at the Correspondents' Dinner one year. I was taking a tour of the White House, and on this tour, suddenly John Lovett appeared in a hallway and said, "Hey, how's it going?" He introduced himself, said, "I'm literally in the room right now with the president working on the jokes for this speech," which was the next day. And I thought he would say, "Come on in. You're in comedy. You want to help us?" But instead he was like, "Well, nice to meet you," and sent me on my way. And I was kind of annoyed because clearly I should be in that room.
Right.
And then I went to the correspondence
with killing bin Laden.
Well, this was the year before that. This is the year before. And so I saw him at the party, and I was drunk, and I'm like, "You didn't want me in the room with the president. You knew I'd be funnier than you. You didn't want me in there." And so I was just joking because the president was so funny that year that it was weird. It's like strange how good he is doing a comedic speech, a stand-up speech. So then the next year he called me out of the blue and said, "Can I send you the speech and kick around like some areas we're still trying to figure out?" And I said, "I think you need to hit Trump harder."
Thanks.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot, Chub.
This was right like around when birtherism was just happening.
Right.
And I was disgusted by it. And I thought, you should really go at him. I mean, this is a really dangerous, terrible person. I was proven correct on that. And so we kicked around, this joke where he talks about The Apprentice and walks through an episode of The Apprentice, admiring Trump's leadership.
Right.
And he said that
thinking you need in the Oval Office, like what would Gary Busey do? And that
exactly
is what we need in the Oval Office. And you cut to Donald Trump, thanks to Judd Apatow, going like this, not laughing. I'll show. I'm going to run for. They say he decided to run for president.
Donald Trump says that that is not true.
Of course, he's not. But you're responsible for the hell that this country is. You're personally responsible for Donald Trump.
I feel pretty good about the fact that I don't think that's the key to his decision making, because he had been flirting with it for decades, and it was clear that there wasn't anyone great about to run. I feel it was really more about the timing and who was looking to run for president. I don't think he loved it, but let me tell you something. Donald Trump certainly had been in a lot of rooms where people gave him shit in public settings. I mean, he's not someone that didn't get joked about a lot.
Well, he did the roast. He was the honoree at the roast one year before that.
Right.
Yeah,
I wrote on that roast, and you weren't allowed to make fun of his wealth. You weren't allowed to say he wasn't wealthy.
He wasn't rich. Yeah.
And the money was supposed to go to charity, and I've heard that he never gave it. That he kept. Of
course.
Yeah.
Well, he's not allowed to have a charity. It would shut down all his charity stuff in New York because it was all a scam. I mean, he would literally steal the money and just pay for his own needs with the money. So, yeah, I truly, honestly don't think that that's what would motivate him.
We all,
but it is funny to say.
Sleep. All of us have to figure out a way not to feel bad about.
Yes, the things we've done to hurt humanity.
There's a Frontline. I'll send you the Frontline documentary. Yeah. I'm being serious. He decided to run that.
I saw that in the Frontline, but that's just something that you say. There isn't really a person in Trump world who says, you know what? He talked to me and he said, I'm going to get that guy. Like, that's just like a interpretation that some people have said, but it could be possible. But then again, look what George Bush did. I mean, he invaded the Middle East, and Donald Trump didn't invade the Middle East. So maybe I saved just an enormous amount of people with that joke. It's possible that it's the opposite, and I am a very important part of history and stopping war. You know what I'm saying, David?
Yep. Thank you for your service. So there are Neanderthals who get a bad rap, and then they're like, what are they called? Hominid, whatever. I don't know.
Homosexuals.
Homosexuals, right? And they're superior to the Neanderthals. When you're because you have met the most, like, the Ubermenches of the world. You have. And are there two types of people? Like, you talk to Barack, you meet Barack Obama, and he is isn't he on a different evolutionary rung than most people? Where he could not fathom our concerns. If you explain to him that, I got a leaky faucet and I'm worried about the water bugs, but I mean, it would just be, but you're not just speaking another language. It's like barking. It's like is that a fair statement?
That there are completely different, like, good and evil. Is that what you mean? That there's like
just different, that they couldn't, like, the difference between me, and I don't mean to trivialize the plight of the homeless, but unfortunately in New York, you walk past homeless people. And I think the difference between me and this homeless, there's a great chasm of everything between me and this homeless person, but it's nothing compared to the chasm between me and, say, Barack Obama, just in terms of intellect, charm, wit, what they worry about. I have more in common with the homeless person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've only been around him a teeny bit at a couple of events where he took questions, like small events, where he would talk to people about issues. And, Seinfeld used to have that great bit about people who want to be president. Like, do they see the president on TV and they think, oh, I could do that? Like, what that means to think like you want to take all that on. And I think that, obviously we're seeing some people that seem like they're very corrupt in government, or they're so intent on getting their point across and winning that they're willing to do bad things to do it. So Mitch McConnell might think, I'll suck it up on these issues because I want to win these issues, and this is how the game is played. And I always felt that Barack Obama was, in his head, a realist who had a sense of the limitations of what he could accomplish, and was trying very hard to just move the ball down the field in certain areas as best as he could, knowing he was going to have to pass it off to someone really soon. So certain things were neglected and certain things were made the focus of what he saw as the accomplishments that he wanted to have happen during his administration.
Right. What is making you furious about the Democratic Party? To me, the mistake I make, and I'm making it up until January 20th of 2022, and then I'll go back to trashing Republicans because it's going to get serious. But right now is the season to be disappointed with the Democrats. You're a Democrat, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, I remember when we passed the first assistance package during the pandemic, and Andrew Yang had a tweet, and it just said, "Oh, I guess we did have the money." And I thought, well, that's the whole thing, right? That it's all priorities. How much we're going to spend on the military versus paid family leave or paying for people to go to college. George Carlin had that great line, like, we never try to solve homelessness because there's no money in it.
Right.
And that's the thing that's sad. And then you do see the Republicans are really organized to try to control all the state legislatures so they can rig a future election in some way. And we don't seem to be able to even get people that concerned about it. Like they can't even get people scared of that. And that's what I find troubling. Like, is there a way to deal with January 6th in a much more aggressive way? Is it impossible to bring anyone in front of Congress to answer questions? I'm always fascinated that there's no way to get people to go in front of Congress to answer questions. That legally you can't just go, no, you have to come. There is no Benghazi committees for everything that's been happening. And it's like the Republicans figured out all the little loopholes to avoid all of that. And it seems like the Democrats, we can't get the Voting Rights Act through. We're not getting, the healthcare through. And I think it's because maybe Democrats think like, oh, we're not like that. We're not aggressive in that way. We don't toss the rules out the window.
Right. So Hollywood has a lot of clout over Pelosi, Schumer. They love Hollywood, not just because of the money. They think something rubs off. Schumer was dancing with Colbert. It wasn't even Hollywood, but they just think there's something about Hollywood that makes them part of the cool kids. And does Hollywood help the Democratic Party or hurt it? I think it hurts the Democratic Party. The money, the glitter.
Wait, hold on. Before you answer, I have to jump. I have to get on a 3:00 podcast. Judd, good to see you.
Can you
David, good to see you, Greg.
Thank you. Can I storm off my own podcast? No, I cannot.
You're asking Judd, you asked me to stick around and you haven't asked me any questions. I'm not your fucking son.
It is a little fucking weird. You told me to hang out and then you just talk to Judd only.
You got to get more aggressive, Greg. That's what I think. You just didn't get aggressive.
And you're looking at a guy who does the Adam Carolla show, where if you don't dive in, you will be sidelined for the entire time.
Hey, I'm not your fucking security blanket. and hang up.
All right, David. I'll see you soon. Thanks for having me on.
Do this more often.
All right,
Greg.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
We're talking with Judd Apatow, and so we'll talk. You have some time.
Yes, sir.
Back to if you could get Pelosi in a room, if you could get Schumer in a room, I would assume you have been in a room with them.
Not rooms where we were talking about accomplishing anything. We're in a room with Idina Menzel singing at a benefit or something. But I feel like, we're all very hesitant to talk about what's wrong on our side.
And Nancy's face is frozen, so I see the appeal.
I think that, people are hesitant to talk about what's going wrong. And, if we control this much of the government and we can't get voting rights through, what's the point of us? And that's scary, that people will become disillusioned that you had this moment. But I always knew that this would happen, which is Trump would just make a mess of everything, make a mess of the pandemic response. And then he leaves, a Democrat comes in, and then you got to pay the piper. And if you're the person sitting there holding the bag when the other guy leaves, then you look like you're not doing a good job. And someone mentioned this to me. I think it was like I was talking to David Frum right when Donald Trump was elected, and we were talking about what might happen. And he said what usually happens is the president tries to turbocharge the economy, and then usually it crashes, and they just hope that it will crash after they get reelected.
Right.
That they can just have it hang in there. All the policies to just keep it inflated in some way.
Right.
And then the next, and then deal with it in the next administration. And obviously there's some of it because, when the whole world doesn't work for a year and a half, how could the economy not be fucked? Mm-hmm. Right? We all sat in the house for a year and a half. Why would we think the economy would be this good after that?
Right. Right. Has comedy, what did you think? Let me just alert our next guest. We're running a little over. give me 15 more minutes with Judd Apatow, and then we're going to talk about the Chile elections, big elections in Chile, that I think is going into a runoff. What did you hope for yourself in, let's say, 2 years from now, before COVID? And what did you have planned? And 2 years later, how many of those plans have you now just said, you know what, that was pre-COVID. That seems kind of, I don't want to do that. Either.
I had a unique experience. I was about to put out The King of Staten Island when COVID started, and we were about to go to South by Southwest to show the movie. So I was very much in a, let's see if I can get anyone to see this story that we worked on for the last few years. And so then suddenly we're promoting it on Zoom for months, just sitting on a couch, and we put it online so people could just buy it online. And that took
tremendously successful, and everybody, I mean, people love that movie.
Yeah, it did really well. And it was, we were really proud of it, and proud that it was about first responders. And then suddenly we were seeing all the first responders on television every night. And I thought, well, it's nice that the movie talks about the importance of that when we're watching all these nurses and doctors and everybody, taking risks to help people during the pandemic. And then I sat around for months and months and months and just trying to get through it, wondering when it was going to end. And then at some point I realized I need to make something else because I'm going to go insane sitting here. And I started writing a movie about the pandemic. So I wrote a comedy about the pandemic, which I shot during the pandemic, which is called The Bubble, and it's on Netflix in April. And it's about a group of actors going to England to shoot a sequel to a dinosaur movie during the pandemic.
Great.
And it's a satire of the ridiculous of that. Like, why you would even do that. It's the dumbest thing in the world. No one needs a dinosaur movie during the pandemic. And so that's what I did to distract myself. And I just finished it. And so now I'm paying the piper of mental health in having avoided so much of it by just being obsessed with my dumb movie.
In terms of marketing that movie, is it in your best interest in April? Do we want COVID to still be in its full glory, or is it going to be more successful if COVID is waning or waxing? What are you hoping for with COVID vis-a-vis the success of your movie?
Well, the good thing about the movie is it's not in theaters, it's on Netflix. So I do not have to hope anyone pays for it. Which I like. I don't want to be rooting for everyone to go to the movie theater to see this movie. It's really meant to be a way of saying to the audience, didn't the last few years, wasn't it just the worst? And here's all I have to offer you as what I can give to you during this painful moment, which is something really silly. That'll make you laugh for 2 hours, where we can commiserate about how much this sucked, about how just painful and terrible it was. And so I hope it's like a really funny, enjoyable couple of hours, because that's what I noticed during the pandemic. That's all I have to give to people is. And
COVID, you can give COVID if you don't.
I can give that as well, but if I stay in the house, I won't. Yeah. But that's my offering to the world. And people would say to me like, oh, thanks. I watched one of your movies, and it was nice when we were all stuck in the house. And I thought, well, that's really all I have. That's it for me, is I can give you a guy getting waxed when you're feeling down. Maybe I can fill a few minutes of your time.
That's fantastic. The best I ever get is you were really great because my wife hates you. I was like, I'm serious. Nicest compliment I ever got is
but I feel like it really is all the same. Like, I've listened to way more of you than you would ever believe. And again, it is the same thing. Like, the hours and hours of pleasure I got listening to your show during the pandemic, where I would just laugh, like, how long is this show going to get? Like, it just goes 3 hours, then it's 4 hours, then it's 6 hours. But I was so thankful, to have it like a friend, during it. And I think that is what we do, right? In different ways and different mediums, we offer ourselves up in some way.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Let me ask you, let me return the favor by asking you a hard question.
Oh, no.
The King of Staten Island, there's a scene, you don't have to answer this because it's going to put you in an awkward position.
I like it. Let's get real here.
There's a scene,
too soft up until this point.
There's a scene where a pharmacist is banging his coworker and some people break into the pharmacy and he pulls a gun nervously and fires it. And this is a pharmacist. And the pharmacist has obviously never fired the gun and he's firing the gun. Yes. The actor who played the pharmacist, who's going to be up later on, to Robert Smigel, was terrified of the gun. I'm not gossiping. I'm not,
Yes.
What are the protocols for using a gun in a comedy? There's no way the gun is going to be what are there's no way there would be a live round inside of it. How creepy is it when there's a gun on your set?
Well, with this new movie we did, The Bubble, there's a lot of guns in it, and we just used rubber guns and didn't have any blanks. So we just said, let's just add little flashes in post and sound effects. The only reason why you ever would use a real gun, or not a real gun, but a gun where you're shooting blanks, is there's some sort of kickback or the noise that might affect performances or how it looks. And I think you could feel that the industry is like, we can do that without the blanks. So quickly, hopefully, it goes in that direction. And in the times when we have used guns with blanks, it's really all about having the best possible people who know how to do it. And if you think about how many movies have had that, thousands of movies, millions and millions of rounds, like when you do it properly, the danger is infinitesimal. But if you don't follow the rules, if you do it incorrectly, obviously it's very, very dangerous. And I hope that the industry just says, well, let's not do that again. Let's not put Robert Smigel in that position again.
I think they did. It sounds like it's not a problem. It sounds like most movie sets follow the protocol that they already know.
Every time I've ever had a gun on set, which is only a few times, we've all just behaved as if it was a real gun.
Right.
And so someone shows you the gun, someone else looks at the gun, a third person looks at the gun, you test the gun. I mean, there is a process that when followed should not allow for the possibility that a live round could get in a gun. That's something that's hard to understand. And when like anything in life, if you don't check, there's a potential for something terrible to happen. And the truth is, you're supposed to check like 3 times. You're supposed to let the actors and actresses check. It's supposed to move very slowly. And I think like part of the problem is when you're working on something where there's limited money and limited time, things speed up and steps disappear sometimes. And that's where it gets very, very dangerous. You can't speed up a stunt.
Let me ask you another difficult question. You don't have to answer it. It was a $7 million production shoot. Rust was $7 million for production. That's a lot of money for a small little film, right?
Well, it's really more about what is the film, what does the film require?
But there are other
we made The Big Sick for $5 million, but there's no action in it.
Right.
There's no horses in it. And so we were able to shoot that movie in 25 days and not have any problems. But if you add action, it takes a lot of time.
Are there a different, like there's a $7 million shooting budget, but there's also a pre-production budget, a post-production, right? When they talked about the shooting budget on Rust, they said the production budget was $7 million just to shoot the film, pardon the pun. So,
well, it depends on, what you're spending the money on. I mean, you could spend a lot of money on personnel, on your cast, on producers. I mean, it's just the rates of everybody, whatever the rates are, will determine how much is spent on the day, how large the crew is. One of the big issues that people discussed there was how many people were working in the props and armory department. And it seems like they were one person short of what they should have had.
Right.
And that's what makes it more dangerous.
And there were too many children of bankers who wanted to be producers, who were collecting a huge salary because they have money and they want to be close to show business. But that's how.
To me, that's not the issue. The issue is anybody can speed up and do a bad job. Right. Any producer can not make sure that you're following the right protocols for safety.
Right.
It's a very individual mistake of what you want to put people through.
Right.
There has to be someone who says, let's slow down. Hey, we've had a couple of problems in the last few weeks. Something's going wrong. Let's have a meeting about it. How are we handling these props? How are we checking? What went wrong last time? You're not hearing about those details. That's what would be interesting to hear, is that when they had problems in the past, did they make an adjustment of any kind?
Right. We have 4 more minutes. And by the way, thank you for doing this. And Judd will be at Largo December 7th with Beck, and he's raising money for 2 charities. One of them is Pacific Pups, and the other is it 286? I didn't get the numbers right.
It's 826, which provides free tutoring for kids who need it.
Right. And that's with David Eggers.
Yes, that's his organization.
Yeah. And
my book, Sick in the Head, all the money from those books of interviews I do with comedians goes to 826.
Right. You had been hoping, I remember reading that you had wished 95% went into the Judd Apatow Vacation Trust, I believe.
Yeah. I didn't realize that people will say proceeds from this book goes to this charity. And then the people don't know how much actually goes. I thought you had to give all of it. So I just give all of it. I didn't realize you could keep it vague, and then get some extra vacation time.
Religion. So maybe I could make you an archbishop. But before we plug the hell out of Pacific Pups, and so we can make this worth your while, in 826 LA, Kyle Rittenhouse and Parkland, you were, I don't want to say intimately involved with the victims of Parkland. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I helped out on a documentary,
right.
And know some of those people, and it's one of those heartbreaking issues, because I think 80% of the country is really comfortable with smart gun control and gun safety, and it doesn't ever get done the way that it should get done. And so now we're just in this insane situation where people are like, well, what can you even do now? And the truth is, if you have hundreds of millions of guns floating around the country, just all sorts of terrible things are going to happen. And obviously there's a way to have a logical amount of guns, and a way that we track the people who have them. People who beat up their spouses shouldn't have access. People who have mental health issues shouldn't have access. And we don't seem to ever make that a priority. It becomes like a wedge issue, as opposed to what is the common sense way to make it safer in this country.
Right. Right. Is that the issue that just makes, there are certain issues that I just get, like, I want to, there's no country that will take me. I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a national character, and I'm just not, this isn't the right fix for me, because when you think back to Parkland or Newtown, you think, okay, at least this is a tragedy, but something good will come from it. And it's gotten worse.
That's what I think has broken all our hearts, is the realization that no matter how bad it is, we're not going to do it. And that's also the issue with climate change. It's all very short-term, selfish thinking, and people aren't willing to make sacrifices for the good of everybody. And I think that's been revealed not just in our country. In a lot of countries, people are just way more self-concerned than they are worried about all of us doing well.
Right.
And for me, the issue that drives me the craziest is Donald Trump making choices about how to handle the pandemic to make blue states suffer, to take care of his political needs before saving lives, and the country doesn't seem that mad about it. He really abandoned all the governors. He didn't want to be responsible for what was happening, and he made choices for political reasons, and the country isn't furious about it. I mean, the country isn't even that furious about January 6th. So that to me is what has been revealed: the lack of concern, the lack of fury about important things that have happened in the last 2 years. And then you go, wow, what would people be furious about?
Well, like Sick in the Head, you write about, you say you were an angry kid growing up. I think there's a recurring theme about anger in the stuff you write about, at least in Sick in the Head, the tempering rage. I think great comedians are the ones who don't let you see the rage inside of them. I'm going to just assume, like most adults, you've spent a lifetime tamping down your anger and your rage. And, you tell your wife, great news, I didn't send the email. I wrote it, but I didn't send the email. I'm getting back. That's great. I'm so proud of you. You didn't send the email. So we spent our whole lives as comedians, comedy writers, adults, tamping down our id, our rage. And then you see the looting that's going on up in Walnut Creek, Louis Vuitton in San Francisco. Should there be? I'm not condoning looting, but we should be angrier, right? As a nation, we've been conditioned to tamp down our rage issues. Here's some medicine so you're not angry. We should be angry, right?
Well, I mean, we could disagree on how to resolve certain issues, but I think it's just gotten to a different level lately. And there's a lot of people, who say we'll never solve any of these problems if everyone's angry. And I, in a lot of ways, feel like it's the opposite. I feel like people are not worked up enough.
Right.
Remember when Donald Trump said, there's only a few cases of COVID and it's about to go to nothing. And we all knew we were heading into a nightmare. Right. And he didn't want to count how many people had COVID on the boats. So he didn't want to let anyone in off of a cruise ship because then the number would go up. And it was so clear, this isn't about solving it. This is only about you don't want to look bad.
Right.
Is there anything that would make you crazier than that? The rage at someone who is willing to let hundreds of thousands of people die for the appearance of his success. And I don't think that's a Republican or Democratic issue. So I don't understand why Republicans wouldn't be equally as angry. Their families have people who die as well. And so I'm just confused by it all, because now that Trump is gone, at least for the moment and hopefully forever, I just think I was really scared of having a lunatic responsible for everything. But there's something maybe even more deeply troubling about people who maybe aren't crazy, but are willing to win at all costs and do anything to get what they want. And that doesn't mean there aren't Democrats who are the same way. But that's a little terrifying. The people who understand how government works can really slow it down, can really make sure things can't get accomplished, like when Mitch McConnell admitted he wanted Obama to accomplish nothing. He wanted him to literally achieve nothing. And when he achieves nothing, people just suffer. Like the country suffers. We're supposed to want the president, regardless of what party he's with or she's with, to succeed. And I think as soon as that became okay for the other side to say, we want you to not be able to do anything so we can get back in power, then the country doesn't work. Because that's not how it's supposed to work. If the president says something that you agree with, you should support the fact that he's trying to do that.
Last question, I promise. You're at the farmer's market on X, hanging out. Me, Garland, Greg Fitzsimmons, we're just hanging out, and they start looting, right? And they've already looted, but the windows are broken. The Apple Store, American Girl, Louis Vuitton, or to browse.
Where do I run in? Is that the question?
Where do you run in first?
That's a very good question. That's worthy of thought. Like, what would I do in that moment? It's a tough one.
There at the Grove and windows, it would be insulting not to take something. It's like not eating.
Or what if I help them, bring some stuff back in the store, hoping they'd give me a free one, right? Like if I help them take all the American Girl dolls back in the store, help them clean up, maybe at the end of the day, they'd give me like one of the, the DVDs of the movie about one of the American Girl dolls. That's what I would do. I would help, but really in a self-serving way to get a legal free thing.
Yeah. Good answer. Go see this man. We've only scratched the surface. Thank you for doing this. Judd Apatow will be at Largo in Los Angeles, December 7th with Beck. And go see this man perform. And you're raising money for two very, very important causes. They are Pacific Pups and 826 LA. Thank you so much for doing this. Please come back so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Say hello to Mr. Smigel.
We
spent a lot of time together talking about Zohan. So
yes, it's a great movie.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Judd Apatow, thank you.